Welcome to Wordpath, the show about the importance of Oklahoma Indian languages and the people who are teaching and preserving them. My guests tonight are Truman Black, an Otoe friend, and his uncle, Arthur Lightfoot, who is Otoe and Northern Iowa. Truman has taught his language at Red Rock High School, and he's working with an Otoe classroom materials development project with students of Professor Susan Garcon in the English department at OSU, among many other projects that he has pursued. Truman, could you teach us how we would do a greeting in Otoe?
For the male, you say ho. For the female, you say ha. So in the language, you have a male speech, and then you have a female speech as well.
So you would say to me,
male
ho.
is ha, ho, and the female is
ha. I'm sorry, I missed my cue at first there. Before we get into more discussions, could you show us on our handy map of Oklahoma here approximately where the Otoe language is spoken?
Well,
let's make sure we get the camera on this first. I think, okay, can you do it at that angle?
Gotta find, here's Stillwater, Perry. We're just right up here, just north of Stillwater on 177. Probably about 25 miles north of Stillwater.
Okay, so the communities are Red Rock and...
Red Rock, Perry, Punk City.
Okay.
Right in that area.
Great, thank you. About how many people speak Otoe these days?
Maybe 20, 25 in that area. You have probably maybe five fluent speakers. Those are the speakers who could talk all day. You have a few who are, I say, semi-fluent, that a portion of their conversation would most likely be English. I'd say probably 80% of the conversation would be in English. But fluent, like my uncle here, he could sit all day long talking Otoe or Iowa.
Yeah, in our introductory program, I was giving estimates of number of speakers. I get this information from various sources, and I think I said about 30 speakers for Otoe. But you bring up an interesting point that you have to decide how you're going to define who counts as a full-fledged, fully fluent speaker. I've heard estimates as high as 50, but maybe some of those people, like you say, they couldn't just sit and talk to you all day in only Otoe. That really is the test of full fluency. If they can talk just like you and I are right now, and no English at all, only Otoe. And of those, you think they're just a handful?
If my opinion counts, I would say someone that could speak all day long in Otoe without a word of English. For me, that's fluency in the language. And in that instance, as I say, there would be only maybe 4 to 5 people who can speak all day long now. Now, as I say, in today, of those count, that 30 count that we're speaking of there, out of that 30, there may be 5 within that 30 who could speak 50-50, and I'd say maybe half of their speech would be English and the other half would be Otoe. Then the other 20 would be their words would be very few. Very few. Most of them are very common words. So, for example, Waduje. Everybody knows what Waduje is. So those kind of words.
So those people aren't real speakers. So it's really not just an either-or thing. That's something that really we haven't brought up on the show before. It's not always that easy to know where to draw the line between, this person speaks the language and this person doesn't. But for sure, you can define that very highest category of full, complete fluency. Like you say, they can speak all day without relying on any other language in the slightest. And of those, you think there are only 4 or 5 speakers that are really that.
In our particular tribe,
and then there are other degrees as you go down the scale.
And as you go down, it becomes much less.
So yours is one of the tribes where the situation is very urgent in terms of teaching the language now.
Oh, I would say
it's going to be safe
the urgency is it's urgent.
Like yesterday.
Like yesterday.
Right.
At this point, I myself, to my knowledge, am the only one who is teaching the language. My uncle, my elders are the one that's teaching me, and then I in turn am teaching those that wish to learn. And I think that's terrible to say, but we have very few who really want to learn the language. That's sad. That's bad.
Yeah. Of course, it's a big job learning a language. It takes a huge commitment of time.
It does. It's a very hard job.
You have to hand it to the people that do go to the trouble to try to learn. It really is a big effort involved.
Yes, it is hard. Well, probably the hard part is not so much that it's hard as so much as there are sounds within our language that are unfamiliar to the individual's accustomed sounds. English don't have the sounds that Indian has.
What's an example of one of those sounds in Otoe?
Biachawe.
That
Or
middle sound, that
bichache.
Oh,
Yeah, a lot of the that's one of the sounds. That's a sound.
yeah.
An adult has trouble with it because of their hang-ups that they have being an adult.
Our habits are so fully formed by them
Yeah.
as far as language is concerned.
Children, smaller children are much easier to teach,
Right.
As with anything. Their minds are open. They have none of the adult hang-ups. You tell them to do something, you say a word, they say it.
Yeah,
You know,
just like nothing, right?
Right. You know, it's
Yes, it's
okay. I
amazing.
say it. You know, that's it.
It's amazing.
But you get teenagers a little bit better to teach than adults. Adults are the hardest to teach the Indian language because they do have these hang-ups. But once they become accustomed, it's just like anything else. You become accustomed to do it, then they become involved.
Right.
But to get them involved to begin with is probably the hardest.
Yeah. Well, now, what exactly is your own personal language history, Truman? Did you grow up speaking only Otoe for a time, or Otoe and English?
For a time I did, up until my grandparents passed away, and I was probably 7 years old when they passed on. Then I went, from then it was with my elders such as Uncle Art and Uncle Truman. I had a lot of elders living at that time. And so when I went to Indian school, I could understand the language and I could speak the language a little bit. When I got to Indian school, of course, nobody spoke their languages. We weren't allowed to speak our language, and that was still back in the 50s. And I was in 1950 to 54, and we still wasn't allowed to speak our language.
This isn't ancient history. This is pretty recently that the
very,
language is
very
still
recent.
being actively suppressed in the schools.
Yeah. And then when I left Indian school, I went to the service, and then, of course, I never spoke the language no more. But when I came home, I was familiar with the language because I had spoken it once before, and I understood at this time more than what I had, than what some of the few that are around here now did.
So you're kind of retraining yourself now, right?
Oh,
you sort of came back and
definitely.
started relearning your language.
Definitely.
And how long has it been since you started that second learning process?
Oh, let's see. I came back in, I've been home now about 2.5, 3 years now. So, and that was one of the reasons for coming home, because I had been gone so long. I've lost so many of my elders, Uncle Art, Uncle Truman. There's just a few that are left now. And that was one reason for coming home, because I've missed seeing them. I was lonesome. As I said, I was hungry for my people again. I was hungry for the language.
Right.
I was hungry for the songs.
Yeah.
You know, so once it's like anything, I guess, well, with food particularly, if you don't eat, you're going to get hungry. You're going to come home. Well, for me, my culture was my food. And being away from it so long, and with my elders passing on, I was losing it. So I figured it's time for me to come home and refurbish myself again.
Yeah. Now, I understand, Uncle Art, if I may call you that for this evening, I understand that Truman was telling me you speak quite a few languages yourself, not only Otoe. What else do you speak?
No, I speak a few words of Kiowa and Comanche.
How did you happen to learn those?
Well, I've been amongst the Comanches about 20 years.
Oh, really? You live down among the Comanche? Well, we have a multilingual guest on the show tonight.
And he also said he spoke English.
And English,
So
right?
he's multi.
English is a language, you know? Let's not forget that, too. So 4 or 5 and all. Well, let's see now. Truman, do you have children yourself?
I have 2 daughters.
I like to ask people who do have children, were you able to teach your children at all, or were they interested in learning? What are their feelings about the language?
Well, I taught my daughters, and they were interested, because even though I was away from my Otoe tribe, I still taught my children their Otoe culture. And even though they live in Long Beach, California, I'm finding that I educated my children quite well in the culture, because when I come home, I find out a lot of the children, the Otoes here, don't know near as much as my daughters do about the Otoes.
Good.
So I tried to carry on the traditional way of explaining to my children of what it was to be an Otoe. So yeah, I did, and I taught them
Good.
songs as well.
Good, that's great. Well, how has your, I guess I have a question here that actually I realize you've partly answered. The question is, how has your involvement in Otoe language preservation evolved through the years? I guess basically you've told us you grew up with it, then you were completely away from your language, and like you say, you had a hunger to come back. Did you immediately start teaching when you came back, or was there a period when you were kind of teaching yourself again, or
Well,
how did that
the
develop?
teaching part of it was quite by accident. When I came home, there I guess throughout the state there was a and federal as far as that goes, there was a move on to the preservation of the language. When I got home, we had elders such as Uncle Art who knows the language, but by, let's say, white man standards, they don't have the teaching credentials, they don't have the teaching knowledge, methodology, using the white man's terms. They didn't have the teaching methodologies,
Teaching technique and method,
Indian
yeah.
techniques, and you know, they could speak the language. My Uncle Art is a very good teacher. He doesn't allow me to make a mistake. Most of our elders were that way. They're very good teachers, but it's just by, again, I use the term white man standards, they didn't have a credential that says they were a teacher. So the educational systems were I shouldn't say nervous, they just said, well, he doesn't have a teacher's degree, you know. Well, I got home about that time, and I had just finished college. My credentials are teaching handicapped people. So I came home and they asked me if I would teach the language, and I said, yeah, like sometimes I do. I jump into things before I think. And but I've enjoyed it, as I say, the teaching, actually teaching the language part. I never, that wasn't my intentions. I came home to learn the language all over again. But when the opportunity came up, I couldn't pass it up because I had intended on working for a school anyhow. But as I said, that's how I fell into teaching. So it was quite by accident.
So that sort of opened the door for you, your handicap
That did
credential.
open the door, yes.
Otherwise you might not have ever taught in
Probably
high school.
not. Probably not.
I'd like to ask you more about specifics about your teaching later, but before we go any further, I know you had a couple of songs you were going to sing for us. So would you like to sing those now so people can hear some of the Otoe language right away?
Yeah,
I'd like
all right.
it if you would sing a couple of songs for us.
Well, the first song I'm going to sing it's in the Otoe language, and the song the song itself is kind of saying where are the warriors at? The warriors have come home. In that essence, so the song I'm going to be singing is in the Otoe language. Away was so sad to water away away. 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 What was so say a green do away 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 was so say to what 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 away away. Away was so say to what away away was so say to what away walk was so say a green do away away was so say to what away. This next song will also be an Otoe, and they call it a Bear Clan song. It's a song that's sang about the bear clan, and what the song itself is saying is Iroska, or the this society, the dance society, or the people to stand up because the Bear clan is coming through, or they're walking by, and they want you to stand up for them, to honor them as they go through. Hey, dos go wagina ye, hey, dos go wagina ye, hey, dos go wagina ye, yo, hey, hey, doing. Hey, dos go get to the bay, wakanda wagina ye, hey, dos go wagina ye, hey, dos go wagina ye, yo, hey, hey, dos go wagina ye, hey, dos go wagina ye. Hey, dos go wagina ye, hey, dos go wagina ye, hey, dos go wagina ye, yo, hey, doing. Hey, dos go get to the bay, wakanda to wagina ye, hey, dos go wagina ye, hey, dos go wagina ye, yo, hey, yo. That's just two of the songs that are in the language. Nowadays they have many songs that are similar to that, that are in our language, that are now used in what they call woyawi, or a festivity or a gathering, and that's what they call singing, is woyawis, when they all get together and they have a good time, and where they go. Many of the songs have special meanings. Nowadays, many of our young singers don't know what they're singing, the words that they're singing, so consequently, many times they sing songs at an inappropriate time. And as I say, if you don't know the language, it's going to be rather difficult to sing the appropriate song at the appropriate time. For example, these songs here, if you don't know what they're saying, you may sing it, many of our young folks may sing it at the wrong time. So, you know, it's difficult if you don't know the language.
That's a very good point. I don't think anyone's ever made that point to me before, that, you know, I know young people have kind of a hunger to retain their culture, even if they don't have the time or the commitment to take language classes and get into things in depth. They feel like, well, at least I can save my culture, I can know my songs and sing my songs. But there is a danger, as you say, that if they don't really fully know them unless they understand the language.
Right.
So if the language is lost, a lot of that understanding is going to be lost forever.
I don't know, well, in my particular tribe, in Iowa's also, many of the young don't know their songs, and many of the other tribes around here, they have their own tribal songs. Nowadays they have what they call intertribal songs, to where I call wordless songs, because there's no words in them. They're just a melody that's carried on. I kind of jokingly say I call them hey-ya songs, because there's no words there.
Could you give us just a little snippet of how a song like that sounds, the wordless songs?
So see, there's no real words there.
Now, are some of these wordless songs, in particular, Otoe wordless songs or Iowa wordless songs, or are they all sort of an intertribal?
No. Intertribally is where, well, you can go to, like, say, Oklahoma City, to this Red Earth thing, and they may have, or maybe around this drum, they may have maybe 7, 8 tribes sitting around there. Well, some of these songs that are saying reservation on their, let's take for example Kiowa. Kiowa could sing their Kiowa songs for a particular honor, because maybe the other 6 people sitting around their drum wouldn't know the Kiowa words. So if it was saying, there might be 3 to 4 Kiowas that could sing the song, but the other singers would be just sitting there. So what they may do in substitution is they may take a wordless song and they'll say, okay, we're going to sing this one, and they'll start off, and then everybody knows the wordless because you don't have Kiowa words,
Right.
or you don't have Otoe words, or Iowa, or whatever tribe may be there.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a little difficult unless you've been around, say, Kiowas or Comanche, and you're a different tribe and you've learned, taken time to learn their songs.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's mostly what your intertribal songs are.
Can you tell us just briefly about your classes at Red Rock High School? You're not teaching them this semester, right? But you have for a couple of years, and
Yeah.
probably will take them up again next year.
2 years I taught at Frontier High School in Red Rock, and this past year we had what they call insufficient enrollment, so therefore we didn't have the class. This class was scheduled, but they just didn't have enough students, and they only had, I think, 3 students enrolled at that time. And before I had 9 and 10 people in the class. So this last school year, I didn't teach. Now it's my hoping that they'll pick it up again next year, but it was rather difficult because we didn't have no materials. We had no books. We had nothing.
You have to
Other
sort of
than
start from scratch.
Starting from
Well,
scratch.
that kind of gets us into one of your other projects that you've told me a little bit about, this working with some of Sue Garson's students at OSU. They're going to be developing some teaching materials for Otoe, aren't they?
Yes, I became acquainted with Dr. Susan Garson through another person who was wanting to learn Osage, and she heard about me, come up and introduce herself to me, and that's how I got in touch with Dr. Garson. When she asked what I wanted or what I might want from them, and I said what we really need in the area of teaching is materials, lesson plans, let's say the acceptable lesson plans per se that a superintendent wants.
Yeah.
That I could say, okay, here's a full year's lesson plan right here.
Right.
Well, when I first started, they'd say, well, what can I expect you to be doing on February 13th? And I say, well, teaching the language, you know.
Yeah.
So they
But they want
want
more than that.
Right. They want to be able to look at a book and say, all right, if I walk in here that day, you're going to be doing this. Well, see, I couldn't do that. I could tell you, well, we're going to be teaching the language, and this is how I was going to do it.
Yeah.
So when I went to Dr. Garzona, I asked her, I said, this is what I need. So her and her graduate students are in the developing a curriculum as well of, let's say, Otoe studies, which means that we also have to develop not only lesson plans, but it means that we have to find resource material as well. By finding resource material, that means we're also developing a method of, and what my intentions was to develop a method of presenting the language material to the adults so that it would not be in a threatening manner to the adult. And one way that we're doing this now, as I'm beginning to teach with the Iowa, I'm going to be teaching their language there, is that we're going to have the children, and we're going to teach the children, but we're asking the adults to come along to help the children.
Very clever.
And in this manner,
The children are going to help the adults, aren't
right,
they?
the children are going to be helping the adults,
good.
but the adults are going to be, well, I want to call it immersed.
Right.
Immersed in, or by osmosis, pull them in there.
Yeah.
I think that's the
I
term,
think that's
osmosis.
very clever. So in other words, adults tend to be so self-conscious and reticent, and they kind of hold back, but by having them bring their kids to class, that sort of gives them permission to just kind of relax and pick it up on their
Right.
own too.
Well,
along with the kids.
that's my hopes, and that's Dr. Garson's hopes
Good
as
idea.
well.
Good idea. When did these Iowa classes start?
Now, we'll be starting there in 2 weeks, and what is that, February the 21st, I think it is? Yeah, about the 21st of February. So I'm hoping if there are any Iowas up in this area, I don't know what our broadcast area is here, but for the Iowas that are in this area.
Yeah. This is basically just the Norman area, immediate Norman
Is
area.
it?
Yeah.
I'll be teaching down at the Perkins Agency, and I'll be teaching the Iowa classes there.
Very good. Well, thank you very much, Truman and Art, for being with us tonight. We have really
Thank you.
appreciated. We were really very privileged to hear your songs as well. We wish you best of luck in all of your endeavors at the OSU classes and back at Frontier High School and starting your Iowa classes as well. Yeah, see, you taught me a while ago how to say thank you. Let me see if I can get this right. Ha, warigrochege.
Oh.
Got it, Maureen?
Warigrochike.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Before we close off, I just want to take about half a minute to remind people, as we announced on our last show, that we do have a Boomer Sooner Indian fight song contest going on. The deadline is June the 15th, and you're invited to send to the Wordpath address, the post office box you'll see at the end, to send your entry, which would be a rendition of Boomer Sooner in any Indian language of Oklahoma, and on tape, and then a written version of it with the translation. We'll have a team of judges, and we'll have a prize. The prize level at this point is $25. If anyone can afford to send in a little money to sweeten the pot, we'll get our prize as big as we can. Try to get some real good entries so that we can sing not only about the Boomers and the Sooners, but some of the other Oklahomans who go to OU as well. Thank you again, Truman and Art, and thank you all, audience, for joining us tonight. See you again next time on Wordpath.
Na hene yo hene, na hene yo hene, ana magwana kita, wa pene manaoni kita. Na hene yo hene, na hene yo hene, ana magwana kita, wa pene manaoni kita. Na hene yo hene, na hene yo hene, ana magwana kita, wa pene manaoni kita. Na hene yo hene, na hene yo hene, ana magwana kita, wa pene manaoni kita. Na hene yo hene, na hene yo hene, ana magwana kita, wa pene manaoni kita. Na hene yo hene, na hene yo hene, ana magwana kita, wa pene manaoni kita. Na hene yo hene, na hene yo hene, ana magwana kita, wa pene.